Hey everybody, Jean-Luc and Alessandro here. We are in West Virginia, which of course means we just played Fallout 76.
And we're at the Greenbrier Resort, which is an extremely ritzy and super gaudy place.
It's very 50s. It's completely appropriate for the Fallout setting. There's actually a bunker underneath this resort, and in fact, it's actually in the game.
Yep.
So yeah, we got our hands on with 3 hours. Fallout 76.
3 hours.
I feel like I finally understand what this game is. It's Fallout 4, but with other people.
Basically, it's a good way of describing it. It's in a lot of ways it's sort of like a super, it's more of a souped-up version of the survivor mode from Fallout 4.
Yeah, in some ways and not. Like there are survival mechanics,
yes,
but they're not as in depth as the survival mode. You have to pay attention to your water and food and stuff like that. But it never felt like too much of a hassle, I think, for those who are concerned about that kind of thing.
It's not like hardcore survival. It's like a survival light, I guess, but still you need to keep track of how your character is doing, making sure you don't catch a case of radworms, which is a new thing.
I couldn't figure out how to get rid of that. It just kind of went away.
Well, just like radiation, when you catch these sort of diseases or other ailments, it'll sap your sort of player stamina and all that. We noticed that your AP meter, which handles which is your action points, which handles bats and sprinting, it'll take a deduction when you sort of catch something.
Everyone's probably wondering what the structure of this game is like. And there's the introduction in the vault, where they kind of, it's Reclamation Day, and they have these little booths you go up to, and they're like, here, grab your, stim packs, grab your camp, grab your backpack. And then they kind of push you out, and from then on, it's super freeform.
Yeah.
There is a basic story that they're kind of presenting to you. You're trying to find the Overseer, and so you kind of go to this one town area, and then you find a holotape that you put in, and the Overseer's like, oh, I'm now over here.
Overseer's log, town of Flatwoods. My God, there's no one here.
And that's sort of the through line, is that you are basically trying to discover what happened to the Overseer, and there are different, they have kind of visited every area within West Virginia that you can kind of explore, and that's primarily how the story is told, through the holotapes.
Yeah, that initial quest where you're sort of following in the footsteps of the Overseer is actually where you sort of it does serve as a sort of extended tutorial.
It does,
because at sort of when you feel like you're about to find the Overseer, you actually discover maybe a cache of supplies, and that teaches you how to craft armor or weapons and even scrap stuff.
Totally. When you play this game, I would recommend at least doing that at the beginning, because otherwise the game is very just sort of lets you go off. You don't have to do that stuff, but you might be a little confused as to what to actually do, because the game throws a lot of systems at you right away.
It was a bit overwhelming, actually, because I felt that we sort of got out of the vault really quickly. It seems like we were sort of being pushed.
Right. We also had 3 hours, so there was sort of this oh, we have to see everything.
We got to see everything. We got to do everything. But I do feel that those sort of early moments in the quest, where you're trying to find the Overseer, did allow for one moments of for us to sort of explore the surrounding areas of the towns we got to visit. And also, we encountered sort of these moments of story, the survivor stories from these characters.
Right, which are sort of side quests, basically.
Yeah, but also it allows for the game to sort of introduce those sort of narrative moments, because the big thing for this game compared to the other ones is that they sort of tone down sort of the core narrative that you would find in Fallout 3 or 4.
Right, so it doesn't. I feels like it's a much smaller scale in terms of the story. It's not, you got to find your son, you got to find your dad, you got to you got to find the Overseer.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like the quest is necessarily going to be this grand, epic, world-changing event, but everything about the game feels more personal, like personal stories. And it's interesting how we were talking with the devs about it, and they were kind of saying this, that even though the game is a multiplayer game and very much a social game in that aspect, the world feels very empty and like a ghost town because everyone's dead. And it actually gave this really kind of creepy, sad vibe to it that I really dug.
Yeah, he called it the loneliest Fallout game.
The loneliest Fallout game for you and all your friends.
But on the inverse of that, you know, this is also the most social Fallout game like, you'll play, because there is voice chat like in the game. Like it's proximity based, so you have to be within a party, and you know, you have to be close enough to other players, and you know, you'll hear them. And of course, if you encounter a jerk or whatever, you can still mute them, and you know.
Yeah, so that's the other thing is that we were all in like a party from the get-go, but you can immediately be like, all right guys, peace, I'm gonna go do my own thing. And you can just ignore your party completely and do all those side quests and story stuff. And for the most part, all that stuff feels like stuff you can just do on your own.
Yeah, and like, we totally did that like during like some missions where we just sort of trailed off and we had to catch up to the other guys because there was just so much stuff to play.
I think if you're the kind of person who's like, hey, I want to play this game, I don't have friends, I'm so sorry, and you just want to play it on your own, it just kind of felt like Fallout 4 in a lot of ways. Like it felt like I'm going to this town, I'm checking all these like cool locations out. A lot of environmental storytelling that like 3 and 4 very heavily leaned on is like very prominent in this game. And you just feel like you're kind of doing your own thing, and then occasionally you run across another person. And to be honest, that it didn't feel that weird, where it's like, I think the worry is like the illusion's gonna break of like, I'm playing this game and all of a sudden, oh, there's another person and they're like, shouting, whatever at you. I didn't get that vibe at all. It just felt like there's another person, oh cool. I can trade with them if I want, you can shoot at them. It's really easy to avoid not getting killed by somebody, by the way. Like, they were a bunch of devs who were like level 60, running around, and they would try and murder. One was like trying to murder me, and I was like standing there, my Pip-Boy, just getting shot at, and eventually I was like, oh, okay, I'll just leave, and I just left. And you can, the player interaction feels like something that you can choose to engage with, and if you just want to have a more traditional Fallout experience of just discovering this wasteland, I think you can absolutely have that.
And the map is like way bigger than the 1 and 4 as well.
Yeah, it's huge. And it looks great.
Yeah. It's we encountered like a number of like varied locations. Like we initially went to like a small town, like sort of like a rural area. And then we went to like sort of I like the area you went to. It was like sort of the top of the world.
Yeah, it's called Top of the World, and I think it's like a diner at the top of this mountain you can go to, and kind of traversing up there was like really fun. There's like a ski resort, but there's no snow. Right. There's a great variety. Yeah. And it all looks really good. I mean, like there's trees with like fall leaves on them. There's you even find areas that like don't look like they'd belong in a Fallout game. Right. When you visit the Greenbrier Inn, or the Greenbrier Resort, you visit the Greenbrier Resort, which is called White Spring in the game. First off, it looks exactly like this place. Like
they totally nailed like the weird
carpeting.
Like
all this weird decor. It's like exactly the same. Even the wallpaper.
Yeah, exploring this place like like on your own, it feels like you're walking the halls in like The Shining or something. And
it's real weird.
It's got that eerie vibe in the game as well.
Yeah, they totally nailed it. Like I actually walked up to the door that if you were to open, you would see us playing the game, and I was like, what if I open this door? What will happen? I couldn't actually open the door. Yeah. But that has like a lush like green lawn, and it has
and a bunch of
a golf course.
Yeah, and that golf course actually had a bunch of as the game called it, unruly feral ghoul golfers.
Ghoul golfers. Who were all level like 35 and completely destroyed us.
They were completely vicious, like very wealthy ghouls who just totally like just wrecked our entire party.
They don't want us level 5 riffraffs hanging out on their golf course. the humor, right?
Yeah.
Is like that's a great example of the humor in the game, where that's a big thing about Fallout for a
Yeah.
lot of people. And I feel like a lot of people were worried that like without NPCs and without traditional dialogue, are you going to get that? And you still get a lot of it through the signage, through the holotapes, through
It's very passive.
the terminals. It's just much more passive, and I'd say like that's sort of the thing people are going to have to come to terms with, is
Yeah.
that a lot of the storytelling and traditional narrative stuff is far more passive in the game, but it's still there.
Yeah. There is a narrative, like, you know, at play, you know, with
Right.
of course with the main like story finding the overseer, but as we experience, like the stories, you know, you find in the game are the ones you discover, like, you know, from the environment itself, but also from the story you sort of make on your own. Because you can make the character how you want, and you can sort of focus on the sort of areas of the game that you want to choose.
That you want to choose, right? There's also something to be said about the experience of discovering those narratives with other players that you now get. There was a really cool area we went to that was like this old airplane that got destroyed, and then a bunch of survivors had turned it into a little mini town.
Yeah.
And then the survivors were all dead. And we go there, and they've all been killed by like super mutants.
Super mutants, yeah.
We killed the super mutants, and then we're exploring, and we find I find a key that's to it says it's to the jail cell, and we're like, oh, everyone split up and go try and find the jail cell. And then we found like an armory that looked like a jail cell, but it wasn't. And then eventually we found the jail cell, and we're like, oh, there's nothing in here. But then inside was a note. And the guy's like, oh, I hid the key to the armory in my like flower pot. So then all of a sudden, like, everyone split up and go look for this flower pot. And
that's where the social element comes in too.
Exactly, and it feels like those are the things that I personally love from like Fallout 3 and 4. That environmental storytelling and kind of like feeling of like discovering these like, you know, old places that have kind of fallen to decay. And being able to do that with friends is actually really cool. And I think that's an experience that I think a lot of people are really going to like.
Yeah.
But again, you can still have that experience by yourself, like completely.
There were many times where we just went out on our own, and you know, it did seem like, you know, the odds were stacked against us, because we encountered a lot of like you know, sort of mobs of like enemies, like
But in general, that also felt like that happened even with other people as well. It feels more just like the game is very much sort of breaking out segments of the world where it's like you go over here and you're going to get really high level enemies. You go over here, you're going to get lower level enemies. So maybe you have better odds with more players, but it's still
doable.
It's still doable, even solo.
And you can actually defeat rather some enemies that are above your level. Like I noticed you were able to take down like a level 15 like a monster when you were like level 6. You know,
yes.
It does scale, like, you know, the damage and like sort of like a sort of the damage resistance, like, as well, like depending on your level.
Right.
But that doesn't happen when you're encountering like another player, because level 59 player is gonna, you know, totally wreck you if you're level
totally
like
wreck
7.
you if you engage with them in a direct fight.
If you choose to engage.
Gotta boost this super 60. You know how it is. See, I found these plans for a race.
So the game plays like a lot like Fallout 4, and it feels like they're taking a lot of the mechanics from 4 and improving and tweaking them in a lot of ways. So things like the crafting mechanics are like very prominent in this game. You know, you are constantly like scrapping materials at benches. You're constantly like, oh, I need to upgrade my, you know, gun. Like you can upgrade it with like scopes and mods. You can you're pretty much crafting everything. I feel like for the most part, I was definitely finding weapons, but it felt like crafting was like the primary way to at least get like some really good stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, the first thing is, like, you know, it's important to make sure you get rid of all your junk items and like scrap everything.
Yeah.
Like, you know, because that's actually how you're able to sort of build like some of the more complex like items, like, you know, how to craft new armor, craft some of the more sophisticated weapons.
Fix armor, they added durability back in, which they didn't have in Fallout 4, so they brought that back. And all that stuff felt really good. It felt natural.
Yeah, I kind of missed sort of the weapon conditions like from Fallout 4, because you know, I even though I sort of prefer that sort of more traditional, like, you know, role-playing like experience, like I wasn't. I felt like, you know, sort of the lack of, like, you know, keeping tabs on your sort of resources and equipment was missing from 4.
Yeah, in a way that like that feels like something that should fit in like a Fallout game. For sure. Also, there's like a really good variety of weapons.
Oh yeah.
So like, you know, they have pretty much everything from 4 seem to be
Yeah.
there. Pipe pistols, like the standard
Machetes.
pistol, machetes. They
And
have
you're
melee
pretty much
weapons.
using everything you can because like you need to use pretty much everything because the game starts off like you're just running out of the vault, and usually like when you leave a vault in like Fallout 3 or 4, you get like a gun or like a baton or something.
They didn't give you anything really.
Yeah, you're like the most unprepared like vault dweller ever to step foot into a Fallout world. So
they had some really funny weapons as well.
Yeah.
I got this torched pitchfork, which was like a pitchfork with like a propane tank that was heating up the blades.
it was called the heated pitchfork.
The heated pitchfork.
It looked fantastic. Like I remember you did like a third-person view look at the weapon, and it was like glowing in like
Running
the
around.
night, and you had like the greaser outfit, and it just looked rad.
That looked great. There were some weapons. An interesting change is that there are level gating for
Yeah.
certain weapons. So, for example, I couldn't use a shotgun until I got to level 5. We killed a higher level enemy, and I found a crossbow, and I was like, "Oh, sick! That sounds awesome." Level 15.
Yeah.
Can't use the crossbow yet, so I can't tell you what that experience is like.
We found a missile launcher too.
Missile launcher. If you kill, like, say for example, if you kill like a level 50 guy who has like a Tesla gun, which is one of the things one of the
Yeah.
high level people were running around with, you wouldn't even be able to use it.
No.
So it's like, it seems like they're trying to do that as a way to also gate off maybe player breaking the game as
Yeah.
far as
Like a
just
high-level player helping us.
yeah,
find
just
out or
being like,
whatever.
here's all my awesome gear, kid, go nuts. Like, nope, you still have to level up to actually use it. So that seems like a good decision in the
Yeah.
long run. Although it's a little bummer when you're like, oh, I want that cool weapon.
or rather, you have it.
You
and
have it.
You can't.
You can
use
carry it. You can. I guess you put it in your camp and
Yeah,
just be like,
don't scrap it, though.
One day I'll get that.
Yeah.
I'll get to use it. So combat felt good. It felt a lot like 4.
Exactly,
Really
yeah.
smooth. That is weird.
It took some getting used
Yeah.
to, like, because I was fighting one of the low-level critters, like, which was sort of a...
like a tick.
Yeah, it was like a weird tick that, once it attacks you, it sort of fills up with blood.
Explodes.
Which is, it looked great, fantastic, but how they sort of adjusted VATS to fit within, like, an online world was that it moves in real time. So it sort of becomes like this sort of auto-targeting, like a attack.
Yeah, and you see the number percentage
Yeah.
like constantly moving as the guy's running around. You couldn't just like stay in that. It felt like you would just like quickly turn on VATS,
Yeah.
shoot, and then like quickly get out of it is sort
Yeah.
of the way to get around it.
I kind of got some like RoboCop vibes from it, like it was just, except not as like accurate because we just started out and
Right. You can upgrade it.
Yes.
I saw there was a perk card that actually let you
Shoot limbs.
shoot specific limbs. So it seems like you can upgrade VATS to be
Yeah.
more powerful, which is cool for those who prefer VATS.
Yeah.
But it definitely got taking used to. Like in most cases, I prefer just like shooting manually.
Yeah. And going back to what you were saying earlier, it does have that sort of amusement park vibe to it.
It does. I
Because,
mean, even the map is sort of designed like a.
It is kind of sectioned out in some ways. Like here's this place, like the sort of the rural area.
It uses like nice drawings of like big landmark locations, sort of the way you would like a park or something.
Yeah.
And that's cool.
Yeah, and it totally ties into sort of the social aspect because, like, it's kind of weird going to an amusement park by yourself. Like, you'd rather maybe stay.
It's
in
like, oh well, let's all go meet up at the
Yeah.
the mill or something, and then go do this quest.
Yeah.
Or let's do that. And there were, I think the other thing people are curious about is if you can do everything solo. And so I feel like again the main story and sort of exploring you can do solo. There are, however, a couple of things that were clearly designed for multiple people.
Right.
The first was these events that would just kind of randomly pop up. There was one that was like, oh, there's a bunch of ghouls, like come over here and kill these ghouls. Now that one, you might not need a party because I think the idea is that other players will just flock to that and you can just show up and be like, all right, we're all kind of working together to do this. But there was a specific quest that we didn't do that said, it was waiting for 3 other people to actually like start it. So I think if you want to try and accomplish everything in this game, you are at some point going to have other people on you, but it seems like you could do at least the majority of it by yourself.
Definitely, and but there some encounters that we sort of saw during our time was like, you know, finding the Scorch Beast, like, you know, this big, massive, like flying.
It's like the little moments,
Yeah.
right? Which really is like sort of, at least for me, that's the things I think I took away from like Fallout 4, were just those little moments of like going into like the glowing sea and discovering cool like locations like that and having those little experiences. And it feels like this game is built on that on like a larger scale.
Yeah, and also we got to see a nuke go off.
They showed us what it's like to have a nuke go off, and then we ran into the nuke.
Yeah.
Totally fine. I think I maybe ran into it like a little late, so I didn't
Yeah.
get caught in the blast, but
A number of players, like in our group and also in the other groups that were playing with us, like, you know, they immediately died once they ran in.
yeah, it was like running after them, and they're all just falling dead.
We unfortunately couldn't see like how the sort of the setting altered, you know, because the big thing with nukes is that, you know, once it drops, then that area is changed. Like, you know, the monsters, you know, become more powerful,
Right.
and there's sort of more valuable drops and resources to find.
Sure.
We didn't quite see that, but it totally looked different.
There's a lot of questions you still have. I mean, you know, we got to start from the very beginning of the game. Furthest I got was level 8, so it's not like we got to really experience what this game feels like in the long term. You don't know really like, well, what are the effects of like nukes? How often do they go off? Does it eventually reset? Like, those are questions that we still don't really know, and I don't think we'll really even know until the game fully launches and people have like had time to spend with it.
Yeah. This is definitely like a game that needs to be played for the long term, because I feel like you can't like get the true experience like maybe from the first 2-3 hours like, you know, we did.
Absolutely.
But we did get to see a bit of everything, which you know, for one, it sort of put me at ease, because like I was a bit apprehensive about, you know, some of the things about this game, but you know, it totally feels like a Fallout game, that even with like sort of the more toned down aspects of like storytelling, like, you know, the role playing, but it plays like a more souped up version of survivor mode from Fallout 4.
Yeah. So if you were concerned that this game wasn't going to be a Fallout game anymore, I think you can kind of put those worries to rest. It feels like Fallout, and if that's what you're looking for and you want to do it with friends, I think you're going to have a really good time with this game. Okay, so I think that about covers everything we saw with Fallout 76. You feel good about it?
I do. You know, the beta is actually coming up pretty soon,
right?
Too. So I'm actually really, you know, interested in, you know, seeing how far, you know, things can go once you play for the long term. Because I feel that's where Fallout 76 can really shine.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's kind of the big question up in the air. I'm surprised how much I ended up really enjoying it. It's sort of that thing where I was like, oh yeah, like I really like Fallout, and I really like running around and playing a Fallout game, and this felt like a Fallout game.
Yeah, I still sort of miss those sort of moments of like storytelling, like role playing, like aspect. But this totally did like rekindle a lot of those like familiar sort of Fallout, like, you know, moments of joy. 100%.
Yeah. So I'm pretty excited for it. I think the only thing at this point is just making sure they get the game up to snuff, ready for ship. If you've watched our footage here, you probably have noticed that it is a bit framey in a lot of spots.
They were very clear in stating that this is sort of an older build, and you know, that they're still working on sort of the bigger issues that need to be ironed out.
Right. They were trying to make it very clear that this is not a final build. It's a couple weeks old.
Yeah.
They said that they feel very confident that it will be 30 frames a second when it comes in. So that was kind of the only real big thing that I felt like, all right, as long as they kind of get that patched up for full release, I'm pretty excited for this game. All right, guys, so that was our impressions on Fallout 76 for the first 3 hours of the game. We have a lot more videos about Fallout 76 you can go check out. You guys submitted to us a bunch of questions about the game, and we answered those, so go check out that video. And we'll also have lots of pure gameplay that you can check out as well, so stay tuned to GameSpot for all coverage of Fallout 76.
So as we stand here today, we pray that the world will know peace. But if that is not our destiny, if war must come, we stand together knowing that here in Vault 76, our future begins.